Next up, I have a collection that I did with Christopher Pelton. He had a collection he had already done of flash fiction stories, and each one was like, anywhere between like 600 and 1,000 words. And I took them and revamped them and turned them all into full-length short stories, putting my own spin on everything. And it's really a fun collection. Every story is completely different than the rest, but it's broken into two parts, and the stories kind of by the fifth story in each part, they kind of pull all the stories together. So I actually was thinking of just reading one of the stories from that. Since there's 10 stories, and if you like one of them, maybe you would like the rest. So I want to read, this is the second story in the book. It's called Everybody Has One. Rusty got to the front door of the shack that was better suited to his name than he was. It didn't matter that it was dilapidated and stained from exposure to the elements. It was his home, just like the forest that surrounded it. It was his father's before, it was his, and hopefully one day it would be his son's. For that to happen, though, he had to meet the one, and so far, he definitely had not. His mother was always on him about it, like he was on a timer that was running down towards zero. The truth was that it was probably her chance to be a grandmother that was running out, and she hated that idea. Rusty hated it for her, but he couldn't just make the right woman magically appear. If he could, he would have done so long before now. She was out there, he believed that. He would find her when he was meant to, just like his father had before him. You can't control destiny. The sun was beginning to rise, and Rusty yawned. It had been another long night, and all he wanted now was a cup of tea, a warm bath, and 8 to 10 hours of uninterrupted sack time. He hung his mask and his keys on the wall hook, dropped his tool bag on the entry room table, and headed into the kitchen with a sigh to start brewing the tea. Nothing was better after a hard work night than some chamomile with local honey, and it didn't get any more local. He had his own bees out back. Like everything else, they were once his father's. The old man used to bring people home to see them, but Rusty made it a point to separate work and home life. He really enjoyed his peace and alone time. He was definitely his father's son, but he wasn't his father. He had brought some of the bees with him on jobs he took from time to time. They were good company. They did what he needed them to do, and they didn't talk his ear off. As Rusty filled the teapot and turned the burner on, he thought about how much he hated the way people felt the need to talk endlessly. He selected his favorite mug, set 2 tea bags in it, and the kitchen phone began to ring. Rusty groaned. He knew exactly who it was. It was the same person it always was. Speaking of people that love to talk and never shut up, he said loudly. He considered letting it ring, but he knew if he did, she would just come over and it would be far worse in person. You can't hang up on someone when they're standing in front of you. Oh, why couldn't I be born to bees? Every single time he took a job and went to work the overnight shift that was his family legacy, she rang the moment he got home, wanting to know every single detail. Fuck, Rusty exclaimed. It was 6:30 on a Sunday. He would call her when he woke up if she would give him half the chance. He grabbed the receiver like it was a venomous snake he was trying to wrangle. Hello, Mother. Good morning, my little rusty blade. The overly enthusiastic voice of his mother sang, making him cringe. The high-pitched squeal of her voice was like fingernails scraping on the side of a truck. At least that horrible noise came with the much more comforting sound of screaming. Mom, don't call me that. You know I hate being called that. Oh, I know, but you'll always be my little blade, baby. So how was work, sweetheart? I want to hear all about it. Of course you do. When don't you? Rusty thought about the blonde, screaming face as she backed into the wall with nowhere to go. She went completely fucking berserk. It was insane. He'd never seen anything quite like it. The flailing and twitching, squirming and climbing up on herself, her noises from moans to growls to cries to broken screams like there was a short in the wire to her microphone, except she hadn't had one. It was purely organic disruption. Priceless. It was fine, Mom. Nothing exciting. I had drinks with a few of the guys from work Thursday night. I finally mowed the lawn Friday morning before going back in. I fixed those broken tools in the shed because I needed to take some with me, and Dad didn't leave them in great shape when he passed the torch. I did my job. No biggie. Got it done and came home. Now I'm exhausted. I'm going to relax and sleep, and tonight when I get up, I plan to live on the edge and do some laundry. I don't have a single clean work jumper, and I think I'm going to have to work again in a few days. And here I thought tonight's bingo would pale in comparison. Between your laundry and your father's cowboy movie marathon, I'll stick with the bingo, his mother joked. Don't you understand that I'm trying to live vicariously through you, Blade? Life has gotten real boring for me since your dad retired. Come on, do your mom a favor and tell me some of the juicy details. How is the old bastard doing anyway? Rusty said, trying to change the subject. I need to come up to the house and see him one of these days. Maybe I'll bring someone from work. A girl? She asked excitedly. Rusty sighed. I don't know, Mom. Maybe. We'll see. So how's he doing? He still got that cough? Oh, you know your father, Blade. Ever since he retired, he just putters around the house all day. He keeps trying to fix things that don't need fixing. He's gotten really into gardening lately. Like really into gardening. He spends whole days out there with the rose bushes and hedges and whatnot. It would be one thing if he were any damn good at it. He still coughs, but it ain't as bad as it was. Or that's what he tells me, at least. It had been 2 years since Rusty's dad had hung up the axe, and he had taken over the family business. Rusty was still trying to find himself, to get his footing and figure out how to make the business his own. It was hard to do. He had been born into his father's shadow. After 32 years in the business, the old man was a legend. He set records that still stand today. It was hard to live up to say the least. Rusty wanted to make his father proud, but be his own person at the same time. He wasn't sure he knew how to be both his father's legacy and himself, though. It was a work in progress. His mother didn't make anything easier either. All things considered, if he was going to find a hobby, at least it's an outdoor hobby. Sure beats him cluttering up the house with something like sports memorabilia or his trophies, which last time I checked still live in boxes in the attic, Rusty said. Oh, Lord, could you imagine? His mother broke out laughing. Even through the phone, he could hear her slapping her thigh. I'm a bit of a minimalist, I think, he said then. What trophies I've gotten, I've given away or donated so they wouldn't come home with me and take up room in here that I don't have to spare. He could hear his mother's disappointment even in her silence. You know that's not the way, my sweet little Blade. Why must you try to change everything? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Rusty sighed. His teapot screamed, and he grabbed it quickly, pouring it into his mug and then setting it on a different burner so it wouldn't continue that ear-destroying whistle. As he drizzled the honey he had taken from the bees out back into his mug, he said, I'm not fixing it, I'm just personalizing it, like other people do with their desks or computers at their jobs. It's okay to be a little different, Mom. Is it? His mother said, quietly but forcefully. Yes, he said back, his tone equally firm. I'm going to go. I want to drink my tea and take a bath before I lay down. No, not yet, honey, please, his mother said. Her harshness was gone, replaced by the pleading of loneliness. She took his silence as confirmation, and her chipper squeal came back. I suppose I should see it as a silver lining to his retirement that the old grump had found peace out there, but the truckload after truckload of dirt, mulch, plants, and whatever lawn decorations might catch his eye are hard to handle, Blade. He doesn't know the first thing about plants or what kinds grow out here, so there have been a lot more dead plants than scenic landscapes. You know him, though. Crazy feller might just like that better. Maybe. Rusty had to agree with his mother. The picture of his father, the most powerful man he had ever known, passing his final days getting his hands dirty while attempting to bring beauty and color into the world, didn't fit. Maybe he had rubbed off on his father just as much as the other way around. It was nice to think that you could have the chaos, the madness, and the peace as well, especially in a world they spent a lifetime bringing so much destruction to. That was work, though. Work and home life were different things. He was glad to see that his father had finally discovered that. But he knew better than to say such a thing to his mother. "Can I go now?" "Soon, you grump. Sometimes I really see how the apple didn't fall far. But it's not the parts of him that you got. Thanks, Mom." She sighed. "Can you go in a minute? Just tell me how everything went last night." Rusty grumbled under his breath. He knew she wouldn't relent. He took his steaming tea with him and went to the rusted metal bathtub in the small adjoining room. He turned the faucet on and it choked and coughed before spewing brown water. He thought of the boy who went to scream but lost his throat before he could. He had coughed and choked the same way. His own sludge spurted and poured from him. The difference between that boy and the bathtub was the bathtub didn't look frightened as it tried to find its life. "Things started well enough," he said. The water eventually came out semi-clear, and he put the grimy stopper in place. "Roy down at Billy's barbecue told me when I was out there grabbing some pulled pork that 5 kids had come through asking for directions to the Walter cabin. Roy said you can smell the booze and the smoke the minute they came in, damned heathens." "Sounds to me like they were asking for it. Drinking and smoking? That's just not right," Mom interjected. "I'll bet my bottom dollar they were fornicating without a care, too." "Exactly right, Mom." He could hear the enthusiasm in his voice and realized that part of him really did like talking about work. Maybe his mother knew that deep down. She knew he didn't have friends. He didn't talk to anyone really outside of Roy and his parents. So I grabbed my mask, loaded up my tool bag, and headed to the far side of the lake. "You don't wear your daddy's mask, Blade?" "No, Mom," he said, his irritation returning. "If I did that, people would just think it was Dad, still going. But he retired and his alter ego should be retired too. I've made my own mask so I can make my own legacy. You should see it, though. I think you'd like it." "Oh, I don't know." "Trust me, it's good. It has antlers." "Oh, no, honey, that's too big. It's not practical. You could get hurt out there like that." "Jesus, Mom, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and Dad used to take me along too, remember? I'm fine. You don't have to worry so much." "Oh, all right, I guess so. I just want to go on record and say that I don't like it. Your mama doesn't approve. So go on then, tell me what happened." Rusty closed his eyes and took a deep breath, doing his best to remain calm. He leaned over and cut off the water to the bath. Steam rose from it, and the idea of climbing into the scalding pot excited him. He imagined a giant throwing carrots and celery in like the cartoons his father used to show him on the little TV up at the house. Rusty chuckled to himself. He didn't want to explain to his mother what he was laughing at, so he continued with his story. "It was dark when I reached the cabin, and I could hear it before seeing it. From the open windows came a steady stream of K-pop, weed smoke, and lots of yelling. All the noise made me sick, and I squirmed in my skin, but at least it made my approach easy. Taking a move from Dad's playbook, I slid the rod through the door handle and cut the power. Once that was done, I slipped in the back door, easy as pie. You both would have been proud." That was always one of his favorite moves, the rod, his mother said with a chuckle. "I remember going with him, and he would look over at me, and his dark eyes just shined with happiness in the darkness he created. I could feel the smile even when I couldn't see it. I loved seeing him in his element. God, I miss it, Blade." "I know, I understand. Maybe next time I can take you with me, if you think it would help. That would probably be better than hearing about it secondhand the next day, right?" As Rusty shed his filthy, sticky jumpsuit and stepped into the tub, he couldn't help but smile at the happiness in his mother's voice. It wasn't forced for once. This was genuine excitement, Oh, would you? My baby. That would be wonderful. I would love that so much. You have to promise not to say anything about my mask, though, or it'll be the last time. I mean it. Oh, fine, I promise. I'll just bitch to your father about it when I get home. Rusty was surprised to find that they were both laughing. He hadn't shared a laugh with his mother in a long time. It would be nice to get close to her again, he thought, the way they had been when he was young, and she and his father had first acquired him. The first two were run-of-the-mill, he told her. Rusty eased himself down into the water, closed his eyes, and relived the night before as he told her the details. He'd stepped carefully and silently, just as his father had shown him. He moved soundlessly down the hallway to the bedroom first, passing right behind the people partying in the living room of the cabin. One of them thought they saw him. They did, but he wasn't there when they looked again, and they brushed it off to go back to whatever drinking game they were playing. They would be uneasy, though, listening for things that weren't right, looking for shadows. He loved getting into their heads like that. It wasn't his father's way of working, but as it had already been established, Rusty was not his father. When he reached the bedroom, there was a young man and a girl naked as the days they were born, rolling around on top of the bed. They were fornicating just like his mom knew they would be. Rusty watched them for a minute. They were moaning, panting, sweating. He found it to be disgusting. But it didn't stop his pants from rising. That was where he drew the line. Rusty had left his bag by a tree outside. He had already picked his weapons for the night. He was happy with his choices. As he saw this young buck ramming his spear in and out of this princess of filth, the spear in his own hand seemed all the more fitting. Rusty smiled beneath his mask as he drove the handcrafted shaved wood spear through the back of the young man's head. It pushed right out his moaning mouth like his tongue was a tree, blood and gore hanging in ribbons from its tip. The girl beneath him had already been screaming, but the tone of it changed when the spear came through. It made Rusty laugh quietly. He knew he had to work fast because the others in the living room, especially the one that had spied him passing by earlier, would come running in shortly. He tugged backward on the spear, yanking the nude man off of her and out of her. His arms flopped around like the tentacles of an octopus puppet, and Rusty couldn't help but giggle at the ridiculousness of this. Then his body fell off of the spear. The girl tried to scramble away as she continued her endless screams, but she wasn't quick enough. They never were. Rusty rammed the spear where that boy's filthy dick had been and continued pushing until he saw it bulge in her chest beneath her flopping sweat-soaked breasts. Then he used the spiked gloves his father had passed down to climb the cabin walls and perch on the ceiling where he watched the others when they came running in to echo the dead girl's screams. "Cut and dry," he said to his mother. "Oh, Blade, it sounds wonderful. Your father had used a spear plenty, but never put it up a woman's baby maker before. I can just picture it. Delightful, dear. I'm so proud of you. This is much more exciting than your old man's terrible gardening. Please continue. Tell me the rest. I need this. I'm having so much fun." "All right," he said with a small laugh. "Well, the third one made the rookie mistake of wandering off from the cabin. It was nice to be able to test the repairs on the weed whacker. I shoved it right up in his face, the wire spinning with lightning speed and shaving the lips right off his pretty little face. The blood flew in all directions as the weed whacker took his face apart. Shreds of flesh hit the air like confetti at a New Year's party, his father's most known attraction. He was expected, revered, and feared every time the year ended. So far, Rusty was far more random. He needed to find his niche like that, his own special day. He just didn't want to be predictable. It was a conundrum. The man was so frantic, taking a weed whacker to the face, that he turned and ran face first into a tree, knocking himself unconscious. That is never fun. Nobody wants to kill someone who doesn't know they're dying. Lame. Rusty used smelling salts to bring the man back. When he came to and saw Rusty's mask of sewn flesh, cow skull, and deer antlers, he spread his mangled mouth and let out the most sickeningly horrendous scream. Rusty quickly used the pipe cutters to sever his tongue. It plopped into the grass, and the mutilated man's eyes widened further than he would have thought possible. Rusty made his best monster noise, and then used his spiked gloves to pierce those wide eyes and tug them free from the sockets that held them. He used the same pipe cutters to cut through the man's pants, and then he used them again to sever his pendulum-looking testicles. He stuck the eyeballs where he got them from and plopped the wet orbs he pulled from the severed sack into the empty sockets they came from. He laughed happily at his handiwork and scaled the nearest tree as the others came running. "Oh, my sweet little Blade," his mother cooed. "You are downright brutal, love. Wherever do you get these ideas? Your father's kills were so traditional." Rusty found himself smirking as he sipped his tea in the bathtub. "Sounds like you're starting to see the good in going my own way," he said. "Maybe," she admitted with a chuckle. "So go on and finish this wonderful story for me, my beautiful boy. What happened to the last two?" "You know how these things go. The girl starts screaming and runs. The guy gets macho. I probably could have sharpened the trimmers a bit more. The girl kept running off into the woods. Rusty watched her go. She was the one that had seen him in the living room. She was definitely living up to her part in the story. He knew he didn't need to chase her. He had every path for miles committed to memory. She had absolutely no idea where she was going. He would find her when he was good and ready. In the meantime, he pulled the dull hedge clippers from the muscled man's midsection. It took quite a bit of effort, and he was doubled over, panting. The guy hit him with one hell of an uppercut. Rusty wanted to curse, but he knew he had to stay in character like his father showed him, so he howled instead. "That's right, motherfucker," the beefcake boyfriend said then. "I'm gonna kill you dead." As opposing to killing me alive? Jesus. Not talking while I work gets to be really difficult. Rusty wondered if maybe he could change that and be more like a Freddy Krueger type that ran his mouth and told these idiots just how stupid they were. But he knew his parents would be really disappointed if he chose that path. He was stretching his father's legacy enough as it was. So Rusty said nothing. He just threw the damn dull clippers. The bleeding Hulk swatted them down with a manly man roar and had no idea that the item he just deflected was merely a distraction. Rusty drew the throwing knife from his baggy jumpsuit pocket and with a flick of his wrist launched it into the flexing man's exposed throat. His barbarian battle cry cut off with a quiet choking sound, and he fell into the dirt. Rusty wanted to give the girl a head start anyway, so he returned the favor for the punch he took. As the man choked and bled on the dirt floor of the woods, Rusty straddled him and beat him mercilessly until there was literally nothing left for him to punch. Then he stood and stretched, exhausted, and ready for his bathtub. "And what about the girl?" his mother asked. "Did you get the chance to talk to her? Do you think she might be the one?" One of these days he was hoping she would move on from that. He hadn't met the one, and he was sure that he would know when he did. He wasn't going to force it because she was grandbaby crazy. Taking her along on his jobs was one thing. That was another. "No, Mom, she was not the one. At least I hope not. I took her head off with a hook and chain." Rusty chuckled. She had actually found his shack and thought it would be salvation. It wasn't. It was his. It was all his. Ever since his parents found him hiding under the sink 20 years ago, he knew it was going to belong to him one day. They were impressed by the way he dove out at them, filthy and angry, and tried his best to rip them apart. They had laughed at the time, but they said they knew then that he was their son and that they would love him forever. They knew when he bit his father's calf hard enough to tear the meat that he would take over the family business one day, and they were right. Now he found this girl at his home. She wasn't like him. She didn't have fight. She was running, screaming the whole way to give away her position. Another idiot. She was definitely not the one. After he took her head off, he threw her over his shoulder and carried her all the way back to her friends. He didn't need anyone sniffing around his home. This was his peace, his private space. He felt the hot water soaking into his tired muscles, and it just drove that point home. "You were so bad, Blade," his mother chided him. "You can't go all your life alone. It's not good for the soul, my boy. You have to find your mate. Even if she's not willing at first, she'll come around. I didn't fall in love with your father the night we met. It took me some time in the cage he built for me. I thought about it, about the art of it all. The creative way he hid the bodies of my friends was magical. Maybe his kills weren't as creative as yours, but he took the dead and stuffed them into spaces far too small, or impaled them on the ceiling fan and turned it on. He always did something interesting with the bodies to make them fascinating to find the next day when the authorities arrived. How could I not appreciate that? When I saw him for the first time, the blood dripping into my eyes from the head wounds soaking my hair, I was horrified. There was no way I knew then that I would be spending the rest of my life with him and raising you. It was later, when he came out to feed me the entrails of my brother's girlfriend, and he had forgotten to put his mask on, that I saw the real man, and my life changed. So don't give up and don't assume, baby. Take one of those final girls home. Give her a chance. I love you, Blade. Oh, and if you do that laundry when you get up, don't forget to soak those stains before scrubbing them with the hydrogen peroxide. I won't, he said with a laugh and a shake of his wet head. Maybe when you come with me, you can meet with the girls and help me pick one. Maybe that's what I'm missing, a mother's intuition. She responded with absolute glee. Oh, Blade, I would love that so much. You know, the man that put his foul seed in that girl to make you was chopped to pieces with your father's axe, and it was rusty even then. That's why I named you that, our little rusty Blade. I know, Mom. I'll call you when I'm going out again. It was actually nice talking to you. I look forward to it, baby. It's always nice talking to you. I love you. Love you too. Rusty hung up and dropped the phone outside the bathtub. He sighed contentedly and sank into the water. Then he came up and sipped his honey-filled tea. Life was good. The tea made him think. I wonder if I should bring the bees when Mom comes.